Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're stepping a bit into the shadows to unravel a profoundly dark theatrical tragedy. So listen closely, because we're diving into a haunting lesson from an old sea captain, but it's told through the incredibly chilling, authoritative perspective of a character known as the Pale Inquisitor. Think of him as a monastic warden of the deep. Now, this isn't just your standard ghost story about a sailor. It is a meticulous dissection of arrogance, logic, and ultimate ruin. So settle in, because the tale of the Glass Fortress and the Ledger of Regret is honestly a masterclass in how the very things we rely on the most can become the exact instruments of our downfall. The philosophy of the deep here is terrifyingly simple: purification through subtraction. Let that sink in for a second. As the narrator, the Pale Inquisitor reveals a really unsettling truth right from the jump. Our old sea captain sailed the oceans with this incredibly rigid soul. But to the Inquisitor, that rigid soul was nothing more than a messy draft. Basically, a flawed manuscript that he had personally marked up for this exact, painful editing process. The captain fully believed he was navigating his own destiny, right? But in reality, he was actually being pruned, stripped, and purified by the very dark forces he chose to ignore. It's a chilling realization that his entire existence was just waiting to be edited down to absolutely nothing. And this is exactly where the captain went wrong. He built himself what the story calls a glass fortress of arrogant Victorian certainty. He was initially sailing on a curated stage that was built entirely for his own ruin. He made this fatal miscalculation by placing unwavering faith in the mechanical precision of the universe. He had this arrogant certainty that he thoroughly understood all the laws of nature and logic. But a fortress made of glass, no matter how geometrically perfect it might be, is entirely fragile. He basically locked himself inside a worldview that was completely transparent to the abyss outside, but utterly blinding to himself. The dramatic irony of all this is just staggering. Lighthouses, oil lamps, impenetrable shields. The captain genuinely believed these everyday navigational tools were keeping him safe from the dark. He thought they were actual shields against the chaos of the ocean. What he completely failed to see was that his warden, the Inquisitor, had already marked these exact lights as mere markers of vulnerability. The very tools he thought were protecting him, they were actually spotlighting his exact location for the dark to find him. It's literally the ultimate illusion of safety. So this illusion inevitably builds into a completely orchestrated fall, and the timing here was crucial. They waited until his zenith of rationality, the exact peak of his human confidence, when he felt the most invincible. And then, the stripping began. They physically tore away his entire world, the polished oak, the shining brass, stripping away every single comfort of his merchant life. And this didn't stop until only a skeletal form remained. His majestic ship and his inflated ego were both reduced to a bare, skeletal vessel that was now forced to serve the deep. Now, let's actually drop the elevated Gothic tone for just a second here, because the core metaphor of the Ledger of Regret is surprisingly relatable. Just picture a standard, everyday accounting spreadsheet, a completely mundane ledger book. But instead of tracking dollars, cents, or physical cargo, this ledger relentlessly tallies up the debts of human sorrow. It's simple, everyday bookkeeping, but done for the abyss. The captain has literally been transformed into a sort of cosmic accountant, meticulously logging spiritual decay and these heavy, unpayable debts of guilt. To really put the sheer scale of this transition into perspective, we have to look at what he was versus what he's become. In his past life, he was the merchant navigator. He traded physical goods, he relied on those oil lamps, and he operated with that arrogant Victorian certainty we talked about. But now, he is the grim collector. He doesn't trade in goods anymore. Instead, he trades in the chaotic noise of guilt. He swapped his lighthouses for the Ledger of Regret, and all his logic has been traded for eternal servitude to the bottomless memory of the abyss. He went from being a master of physical commerce to a grim manager of existential decay. So what's the connection here? Well, let me give you a quick tailored report straight from the source material on the eerie parallels between the Inquisitor's dark duty and the captain's new existence. The Inquisitor operates as a necrotic gatekeeper over a mental wasteland, obsessed with tracking forbidden impulses. The captain now perfectly mirrors this. He's become a grim agent and a universal collector of the world's spiritual refuse. Fundamentally, they are doing the exact same job now. Their specific duties align perfectly through this shared, inescapable connection to the insatiable memory of the abyss. The captain is basically doing the deep's dirty work, exactly like his warden. It's absolutely crucial to understand that this was a guided journey into a necrotic finality. The captain's moral decay wasn't some tragic accident. It wasn't a case of just wandering off course in a storm. No, it was an orchestrated, completely guided path. It was designed from the start to definitively prove that human laws, human logic, and human confidence offer absolutely zero salvation when facing the deep. This necrotic finality is the terrifying realization that everything he built his entire life upon was entirely useless against the bottomless Stark. Let's try to really bring this to life for a moment. Imagine physically opening that heavy, dusty ledger of regret and reading its final entry. Picture me now speaking as the hollowed-out ghost of the captain himself, reading back the meticulous weight of my own failures. I write, "I no longer trade in the light of the stars, but drown in the chaotic noise of guilt, bound forever to the deep as a vampire of forgotten sorrows. A mere servant to an insatiable memory, where the shining brass of my logic has rusted into a ledger of unending spiritual and existential decay." With those harrowing words, his tragic monologue concludes. The transformation is absolute. He's cemented in his eternal punishment as a universal collector, a direct mirror of the dark work overseen by the Inquisitor. The Merchant of the Stars is gone for good, replaced entirely by a ghost bound to a book of debts. Which leaves us with a pretty haunting question to wrap up today's explainer. Think about it. When the lighthouses of your own logic inevitably fail, what chaotic noise will be written in your ledger for the insatiable memory of the abyss? We all build our own glass fortresses, right? We all have our polished oak and our shining brass. But when it's all stripped away into a necrotic finality, what debts will you be left to tally? Thank you so much for exploring this chilling tragedy with me today. Keep questioning your certainties, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.